happens, we paid a visit to the Angle Dynasty League. So that's what we are going to do today. If you would like to see how we Angle analysts here are performing in that league, how others are performing, and just what a very nice and healthy Dynasty League looks like, then this is the video and podcast for you. Welcome to the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew. I am joined by my two partners here at Angle. First off, on the bottom, Mitchell, how are you today, dude?
Doing great. Recovering from a long-standing cold with post-nasal drip. So, Andrew, you've seen me over the last weekend. I was dying out there on the golf course, but after visiting the doctor, I'm ready to be back on the podcast again and talk basketball with both of you guys.
Yes. Nothing better to get going into basketball than talking about post-nasal. But I do like, of course, the dedication of you getting out there on the golf course, even if you weren't fully ready to get out there. Yeah, that's some real grind and hustle right there. Okay, next up, Braxton. How are you today, dude?
Good, man. Nick, Mitch, I'm right there with you. I recovering from a quite a severe cold, and I've got the new setup here to go with it. It's a little bit of a work in progress, but I'm excited to, I guess, debut it and to talk basketball.
Right. I forgot that you moved. Hopefully that's been a smooth process. I suppose it's not the best time to be feeling under the weather. But today, boys, we are going to be talking about the Angle Dynasty League. You know it. You love it. It's the league we were going to be in permanently. Now, the first subject we're going to get into is power rankings. So, Mitchell, you handle our power rankings. You did one at the beginning of the season, and now you've done kind of like a not so much mid-season update, but early season update. And I believe you're planning to do one right around the playoffs too. But before we get started on that, how are things looking for us in the Angle Dynasty League? Has there been some big movements and shifts within our power rankings?
Yeah, especially for us, we all kind of dipped in our rankings since our first update. We had a slew of injuries. Victor, for me, Andrew, you've been dealing with that Suggs injury, who's been very pivotal for you, and then Brax, the on and off issues with like LeBron being kind of like day to day, and like Luka missing some random games definitely hurt us a bit. And some of the other teams have capitalized and made a stronger impression than I expected. For one, shout out to Mexico City, who's entering our top three, who we'll see very shortly. And also Syracuse, who went from playoff hopefuls who, barely made the playoffs last year and is looking like a top 5 team this year. So very excited to look into that very shortly here. To start for the mid-season Angle Power Ranks, I just want to say, after this update, we're going to be expecting another one on my end where it's going to go into, post trade deadline. So after all the big trades have been made, within the actual NBA, but also with our league, there's going to be a lot of team dynamics that are going to be shifting, a lot of beneficial or those that are going to benefit from the trades, those who aren't. And in the new write-up that I'm going to be writing up, I'm going to also include some of our playoff predictions. So who I think is going to be a contender, who's going to be an early exit, and who's going to be a dark horse. So if you're in this league and if you're watching from the outside, please stay tuned because that's going to be a very exciting update. All right, so to kick us off, we have a new number 1, the Beijing Ducks. So this team, a little bit different than what initially went into the season. As you'll see in a later slide, he traded Paolo Banchero for Mikal Bridges. He also obtained, I think, Derek White is new on his team as well. So a lot of new faces. He's currently dealing with an injury with Nikola Jokic, but he should be back within the next 2 or so weeks. And he is a top 3 team in the standings. And if you're headlined with Jokic, you're always going to be a contender. At number 2, Blackwater Boston went down 1 spot from our first ranks. The thing that is with Blackwater Boston is that although he does have a lot of talent scattered across the team, he has a lot of different injuries, whether it's to like the minor ones from Steph Curry, where he's like sitting back to backs. Josh Giddey's been injured. Zach Edey is going to be a huge miss for him. So for him, it's really, it's tough because you have so much talent and you don't really know who's going to pop off for you, especially when it's very well dispersed. I have that trouble in one of my other leagues. So for him, he doesn't really have that like, okay, I'm going to play Nikola Jokic, who's going to dominate across the categories for me. Steph Curry is very good, don't get me wrong, as the number one piece. Also Josh Giddey, but they're not really that staple like a SGA, a Jokic, or a Luka is. So he did receive a bump. I think he's still a top 5 team in the current standings. Number one, who in our current standings is Mexico City, and he lands here on our power ranks at number 3. He has a lot of untapped potential here. For one, he has multiple first-round picks that he can trade, and he also has Walker Kessler. So if he ever wants to make a huge playoff push, he can always sell those pieces to make a very win-now ready upgrade. I will say I didn't keep him number 1 like his true standings in the league in our power rankings here, because there's a lot of concern with also Lauri Markkanen and how the Utah Jazz are kind of playing things out. There's going to be a lot of annoying rest days, injury maintenance days for a star like Lauri, who's averaging 28 points per game. He's having a great year, but the availability leading up to the playoffs for this squad is very shaky. But he also has that draft capital to make a huge upgrade. Here at number 4,
can we talk about Mexico
Sorry?
for a second real quick? Just because I think this
of course.
is so interesting. Mitch, do you have any insight on, because I know you have the Basketball Monster rank on here as well. He's ranked 17th on Basketball Monster, which is outside of the playoffs. Do you have any insight as to why, or any opinions on why this team is performing so highly, despite, what the projections might say, as well as, injury to a major player in Walker Kessler?
Yeah, let me look into that really quick. But
I mean,
a lot of players too, like Malik Monk, who's been having coaches DMPs, who was a pivotal piece for Mexico City last season, is also sitting. So like it's very interesting. It really could be, strength of schedule. Maybe he had up to this point some pretty easy matchups, but he also beat pretty good teams. Like I believe he beat you, Andrew, in a close one, and he also beat Blackwater Bossing. But a lot of players like a Colin Gillespie and a Cam Spencer have risen to the occasion this year. So maybe he's just having players who, pick up the slack when the time is needed. Yeah. I'm really not too sure, because the projections really don't favor him too much because of those things, like to the Walker Kessler, where he's out for the entire year. And also, there's DMPs for Malik Monk.
I mean, I'll be completely honest. When Kessler went down, I thought this team might have been dead in the water without a trade. And he's, like you said, he's really hit on Gillespie and Cam Spencer. But Spencer Jones was a pickup off the waiver wire for him as well, who's been pretty helpful for him over the last few weeks. But just his mainstay, his ability to stay at the top of the standings has just been so interesting to me, as well as impressive. And Mitch, like you said, when he has those firsts that he's able to cash in, as well as somebody like Kessler, I mean, seeing what he's doing now without those guys, or whatever those picks could turn into, him turning those into legitimate assets, in my opinion, make him a super scary team. And I think it's just a matter of time before he does that, because I remember when Kessler went down, there was a period there in the beginning of the season where he was going to shift towards a tank. And he just kept winning.
Oh, yeah.
Winning.
That's right.
Maybe it's something to do with how the players he has, mesh well, or it could be strength of schedule, but we're at a pretty significant sample size at this point, so he's played over half the league and he's still sitting at the top ahead of some real juggernauts like Beijing and Blackwater. So this is really a team to watch out for, I think, despite the number 3 on the top here.
Especially with, like, I didn't even mention Najee Marshall, who looks like the big winner of the AD injury.
Yeah.
Right. He's putting those silly season numbers that, won a lot of teams their leagues last season in March. So, Najee Marshall's 25-5 run is looking like a consistency, at least for the next 5 or so weeks, breaking into those playoffs for us. So the next one I want to talk about is Andrew, who rose up the power rankings at number 4. And really quick, for a reason why, is he did beat Braxton and I this season. Wow. So I'm going to give him his flowers, and I'm going to put him above us. So Andrew, would you like to talk about your team really quick?
Yeah, it's especially at the time when you're like kind of solidified these ranks, I was sitting above you in ranking at that time too. I mean, it's so close with you right behind me at 5. Spoiler alert, that's who the next one's going to be, Mitchell. Because like even though like right after you finalized this, you ended up going a game above me, and even though last week I won 6-3 and 7-2, you still gained a little bit of ground on me too. I'm not sure who you ended up playing, but was frustrating on my end for me to see that. But I know that my team's always dangerous because my 6-3 win last week of my 2 wins was against Beijing, who's number 1 on these power ranks right here. The huge difference maker for me is Jalen Suggs. When Suggs is healthy, I was riding in the top 3 pretty comfortably. With Suggs hurt, I'm more like in the top 7. So, I mean, if I'm going to choose a time for him to be hurt, I guess I would rather it be right now. And hopefully he's fully up to speed, especially when I really need him come, February and March. But I finally was able to make a trade to have enough room to bring Maxime Reynaud up. Actually, majority of this time where he's been playing, he's been hidden in my minors because my roster was too full. So I was glad to bring him up, but I know Sabonis is returning, so we'll see how that works out. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's really just Shea and James Harden kind of spearheading the attack for me. I have some help, so a bit of depth around them, which is kind of just, the main construct of how my team is, but it's definitely always going to revolve around them too, plus the depth. So happy to see where we're at right now, but definitely do need to see Jalen Suggs coming back here quite soon. He's actually a really big difference maker.
And somebody not mentioned here on your notable assets, Andrew, who I think has been really carrying, has been Russell Westbrook.
Yes.
Having an unbelievable season. And
yes.
Despite his name value and how many people love to hate on Russell Westbrook, I feel like there's not a lot of discussion around him this year and how good he's been for fantasy. And I think with the Kings being terrible, Andrew, you and I have talked about this a lot. Even if they sell off a lot of these guys, Russell Westbrook to me screams like someone who's going to be a tank commander and just going to continue to put up, insane stat lines. So he's been one in the absence of Suggs really making up for it. Right. And then also as we head deeper into the season, he's someone when Suggs returns, like you said, just having that production from Westbrook is such a luxury.
Yeah. I've made a few trades this year. Like I got, a bit more production back, giving away Bilal Coulibaly, getting like DeAndre Hunter and Jake LaRavia. And I needed more depth for my team. Like I said, I got rid of Dalton Connects, who wasn't really doing much for me, which opened up some room for me to bring Reynaud up. But easily the most important trade of the year for me was acquiring Russell Westbrook. Geez, that's been one of the biggest game changer moves that I've made all year. So I hope that is the case, Brax, that the Sacramento Kings kind of end up being, like Russ and the kids, basically. That's best case scenario for me easily because I have Russ and Reynaud. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, here at number 5, I went down 3 spots, unfortunately, and I was at the top of the ranks at the last update, but my team really couldn't survive without Victor Wembanyama because outside of him, my only playable center really is Jay Huff, and at that time, I also had Derek Lively, but he was out for majority of the season before eventually being out for the rest of the season. So it was a bunch of my team was essentially a bunch of guards and forwards missing that gap at center. And this was also prior towards that real J Huff explosion when the Pacers were still experimenting with, Tony Bradley and Micah Potter and whatnot. So huge dip in production there with the absence of Victor. But I will say since that update, I did trade Noah Senge, who is also out for the season, Bulls lottery pick this year for Jimmy Butler. So really establishing that guard forward rotation, really, alongside paired with Victor, who's kind of just holding his own alongside Jay Huff, who is really a one-year rental because, Pacers are always looking to upgrade that center spot. A lot of rumors circulating there. I don't have much else I'd like to move at this point. So I'm really sticking with my team and seeing how far I can get at this point. At number 6, I have you, Braxton, here, down 3 spots, both of us dipping pretty far in the contenders tier. How do you feel about this ranking that I have you here?
Pretty good, considering this team is yet to win a playoff game, although it does look completely different from last year. But I will say I've got the Luka LeBron pairing, which is just such a blast to have, with the idea that I'm going to kind of surround them with, I guess, just good accents, I guess, for lack of a better word. There isn't really like a third star on this team unless you want to count Knipple, but everything on this team is built to accent Luka and LeBron, right? So when one of those two guys misses, we've run into an issue. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been so huge this season, and I expect him to continue to play out of his mind with Trae Young now out of the picture. I know McCollum and Kispert has come in, who are both taking some shots, but I think Alexander Walker's role is safe. Not listed on here, Moussa Diabate, Davion Mitchell, who I think have been so huge as well for just being able to rack up those counting stats, because that's kind of what you need on a team that's built around Luka and LeBron. Mo Wagner is someone who I had just coming back. Ty Jerome is kind of waiting in the wings whenever he's healthy. And as you note here, I have an extra first-round pick to trade. So whenever I decide to cash in on that, probably around the trade deadline, as my dog is running around me, around the trade deadline, I expect to get a nice boost in production, and I'm really excited to see, how I can improve the team further with that first round pick. We'll see how many sellers there are. The trade market has actually been weirdly quiet. I don't know if you guys agree, but doesn't seem like there's a lot more people trying. I think at this point, trying is maybe not a good word to use there, but a lot of people pushing for the playoffs. More so
it
than
seems like people are a lot more like locked in with their team, like a lot more like, last year was the startup draft, and this was kind of a question I was going to pose to you guys prior to us moving into talking about some trades that have happened in the league. Was, it's noticeable that the amount of trades have declined a little bit. There's definitely has been some, but last year it was popping off, and I think that is some guys that have kind of just settled into, this is, who I'm comfortable with. Maybe some people are capped financially. Also, there's now kind of clear decisions on who's taking and who's competing, moving into year two as well. So it has been a little less in frequency for sure, but there's still been some notable trades, which we're going to get started on here shortly.
And and so it'll be, I guess my point is, it'll be interesting to see kind of how, what happens closer to the deadline. Are we going to see a couple guys on the cusp just kind of sell everything off? Who are the biggest buyers going to be? That kind of thing. But yeah, I guess, Mitch, to answer your question, I'm pretty satisfied with this ranking here. I think this team can make a lot of noise. So.
All right, that's great. And really at this point, anybody really in that top 8, I'd say, can make a finals run. There's a little bit of a gap between 9 and 10, but they still have enough pieces that are strong enough or they're deep enough to upset us at any given point. Because last year, I believe over half of the lower seeds beat the top seeds. So really anything can happen. But when you're heading your team with Luka Doncic, you always really got a shot. All right, so at number 7, another very deep team who traded you, Luka. Kat, Franz, Anthony Black, who is this year's real breakout, one of the top 3 breakouts, I'd say. Keontae George, another big breakout. And Santi Aldama, who has been nearly a top 100 staple for the Grizzlies team that's been dealing with injuries with like Edie, Jaren, Brandon Clark. So really taking advantage of the opportunity. Gafford's still a good block specialist, and Andrew Wiggins. So this team, although no picks, really kind of just set in stone here. But because of how deep this team is, but also paired with, 2 top 30 guys with Kat and Franz, could really make a really deep playoff push.
And can I just add, Mitch, you said no picks. People who are unfamiliar with our league, I just want to add, you'll see every team here has at least one first round pick listed. That's just because of the rules in our league where you have to maintain one first round pick at all times. So anybody with more than one, that would be a team that can trade a first round pick. So when he says no picks, it means no tradable picks. So I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. So no tradable picks for the Chicago Bulls, but still a very deep team that can make a deep push.
It seems like Chicago was ranked as in top 10 with your last power ranks. They're in 7 now. So they're doing what's supposed to be doing. They're taking care of business, because once we start to move just below them, we have 2 teams that have risen up quite a bit. And then we're going to talk about some teams that have dropped down a bit. So get us started here on 8 and 9, Mitch, because this is a pretty interesting duo here that's been performing very well.
Yeah, so shout out to Syracuse Nationals, who really didn't have the strongest team last year. I believe he barely made the playoffs, but he actually had a pretty deep run. I think, Andrew, you beat him in the semifinals, correct?
I did. Or quarterfinals, but yes.
Quarterfinals. So yeah, like I think just the natural progression with like Tyrese Maxey has, erupted this team into top 10 contention, like as a serious contender, because at that point, Maxey last season was like a top 20 guy, but now he's looking like a top 10 guy, a guy who's going to go in the first round in redraft leagues for the next 5 or so years. So paired that with, Desmond Bane, who's always going to be great, clean percentages, and Kevin Porter, who's been pretty nuts lately. I know he just got delegated back to the bench, but he's putting some top 30 numbers. Who knows if it lasts, given his new role. Just an overall pretty deep perimeter-oriented team. But he also has 1 tradable first-round pick. So if he ever wants to upgrade that, his front court depth and kind of have a little bit more well-rounded stat set, let's see where this team goes, because he does have that good playoff experience from last season. And hopefully it carries on, because this team is looking even stronger this year than last year. All right, next is Brisbane Bullets. Quick shout out to him, because this is a team that we kind of thought was dead in the water, trading all his assets. He is someone who is a hypermaniac in terms of trades. He conducted our first, 5-team trade last season that, I've ever been a part of in Dynasty Leagues, and I've been playing for the last 5 or so years. But I credit his rise to Jamal Murray, who is a top 10 player this year, given the slew of injuries to the Denver Nuggets, but he's also been performing very well, even with Jokic too. So with the absence of MPJ, there's going to be more shots to go around. Cam Johnson's not necessarily that type of guy who's going to take up a lot of shots. Christian Brown is more of a role player that's a good connective piece next to Jokic. And Peyton Watson is looking like a really good player as well, but he's someone who also complements Jamal. So with Jamal being in that first round category alongside Jalen Johnson, who's a top 20 player in himself, who's posting really crazy lines with triple doubles. Naz Reid's looking good. Shaden Sharp's really erupted lately. So even though this team is very top heavy, he has the firepower at any given week to upset some teams. And he beat my team with Victor Wembanyama a couple weeks ago. So I've put him into that contender tier because of that, and he's had some other pretty good wins as well along the way. And then the last team in the contenders tier is Valise. He dropped 2 spots here. A very deep team, a lot of picks that he can trade at his disposal, but he's really just lacking that number 1 or top 30 option that he can really rely on. Dyson's very good, but he's more of a connecting piece who has a more, dispersed stat set with an emphasis on steals. Andrew Nembhard's looking really good for the Pacers, but you never really know their long-term plan in terms of injury management. We've kind of seen it happen over the last couple of weeks as they try to get a top pick. Klingon's looking really good, but even though this team has a lot of depth, I don't necessarily think that they're ready to upset some big teams, but I left him in the contender slot just because of the tradable assets that they have. They can always consolidate and make a big push for the playoffs.
So, someone you don't have listed here, Mitch, I just want to mention is CJ McCollum, who he traded, I believe, Fred VanVleet for. And I think that's one of the trades we're going to talk about at some point in the future. But, I think that trade maybe at the time was, you're grabbing someone who kind of has a murky outlook late in the season, but now McCollum is in Atlanta. I think that he's going to be a huge difference maker for this team and maybe even in the playoffs. Just with that rock solid outlook for McCollum. both now and moving forward. So just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, very, very deep team. And, anybody in the top 10 can make a splash. So, and Adrian's very savvy. We've played with him in, I don't know, 5 or so leagues that were shared between all 4 of us. So we know what he's capable of. He's going to be very active in the trade deadline like he is every year. So I'm excited to see what he has in store for us. All right, Brax, can you lead us off with the playoff hopefuls tiers?
Yeah, one thing I will say, I just wanted to preface you into this, Brax, for the playoff hopefuls is at the beginning of this tier here, there is 2 people that have fallen off quite a bit for out of the top 10. So I kind of want to focus on them a little bit because they are obviously still in the playoff hunt. So we'll go through this section a little more quickly and the tankers, and then we'll start to talk about some trades. But the notable is mostly like Las Vegas and Houston. We have Hobart that dropped down a little bit as well. So what are you seeing happen there, Brax?
Yeah, Las Vegas to me seems like a very top-heavy team. I know he's been missing Austin Reeves, and it's kind of knocked him down in the standings a little bit. But what you see here with like these top, how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. These top 6 guys. That's really the meat of the team. A lot of these other teams we've been talking about have some supplementary pieces. 8th, 9th, 10 type guys. In terms of a full 12, but with Las Vegas, it's really like these guys, and then he's got like Brandon Williams below that, Isaac Okoro, kinds like that. So there's a major drop off after that top 6, despite that top 6 being really solid. Şengün missed a little bit of time. Reeves has been out, but also there's some concerns with having this top heavy of a team and 3 of them being Rockets. That's a little bit concerning to me, and in the playoffs, that could be an issue as well, depending on how the schedule shakes out. In these 30-team leagues, it can be very risky to load up on multiple players from one team. Anything 3 and above is quite risky, and I would know I have a propensity to do it quite often. I think there's one league I have 5 Hornets in, not on purpose. It just kind of ended up that way, but it's something that can really bite you. So I will say Jaylen Brown has been awesome. Remember we were concerned about Jaylen Brown resting down the stretch in the Celtics team being not good. They're second in the East as of today. So I don't think there's any concern for Jaylen Brown down the stretch as well as any other Celtics. He's got that one tradable first-round pick. I would love to see him kind of take that Isaac Okoro contract and that first-round pick and buy himself some depth. So
maybe get rid of Ben Simmons too. That
would
probably help a bit.
The Ben Simmons on the minimum contract, maybe he's just kind of biding time and hoping he signs with a contender late here. It's not like there's a ton of free contributors on waivers, but Simmons I think is maybe dragging the team morale down. So definitely not helping in that regard. Next we got Hobart, who is our boy Ben. This team is pretty interesting to me as well. It did not look like this last year. He's really crafted around Giannis. I think he's put some decent guys around him. I don't know what to say about this team. I mean, I think Brook Lopez is someone you don't have listed here. I think people expected a lot more out of Brook Lopez this season. Some supplementary pieces he's got. He's got Jamal Shead, Chris Dunn. So he's got some low-end guards that I really like. I don't know. This team, there's just something weird about how this team meshes. Maybe there's not enough assists. Maybe there's not enough steals, something like that. He could be a matchup nightmare in the playoffs, depending on how Giannis looks come playoff time and how Giannis performs. Could be a sneaky team. Let's say he finishes 12th. I believe he's 14th in the standings right now. But the problem is this team is very top heavy in terms of contracts, right? He's got the Rudy Gobert contract. He's got the Jaren Jackson Jr. contract and the Giannis contract. So when you have multiple large contracts like that, it really limits your ability to make those low end moves kind of in the wings and boost yourself up in areas without making big shakeups to your team. So I think there's more improvement to be made. And I know Ben will be hard at work to do that.
Quick note on Ben's team is that this team is very punt heavy, and we've seen some pretty drastic upsets early in the season, beating Andrew and also Blackwater. So this team can do damage, but it really has to be on the right week and given time.
100%.
And Max, how do you feel about Houston?
Sorry, I scrolled up too far. Houston, the Comets. Yeah, we'll skip down to Houston. That's Mark. Skip down. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but
well, we're not skipping down. I more so was talking about. I referenced you into this about like people who've kind of dropped out of the contenders into the playoff hopefuls, which was Vegas, Hobart, and now Houston. Okay. But we're absolutely going to mention kind of just the new players. Well, Kanazawa squeaked into the playoffs last year, but he looks like he's back again this year. And then new people in the playoff picture, PSV and Dubai. We'll definitely talk about them. But let's talk about Houston here really quickly.
Yeah. Mark has really had a hard time with this Sabonis injury. And, I think he would admit as well that he knew if one of those top guys on his team went down, he was going to struggle. And it's been just such a nightmare season for Sabonis this year. And it's really disappointing for me as well because I was so high on Sabonis coming into the year. I think it really just comes down to that. Sabonis is back now, but he hasn't really got anything out of D'Angelo Russell. Max Strus has yet to touch the floor this season, who are some guys I know he was counting on with his limited depth. Zubats has been nice, but he's missed some time. Levert has been underwhelming. Peyton Pritchard's been great, so there's no concern late season with him that I think some people had. Just same thing with Jaylen Brown, but I think there's some moves to be made here for Mark, very similar to a lot of these guys in this tier. They're a couple, maybe one or two moves away from, I think, making a deep run. But let's go ahead and let's do PSV. Andrew, was there another one you want to talk about in that tier?
No. So those were the main guys who dropped out of contenders to playoff hopefuls, but then we have some new guys in the picture where like Dubai's in the 15th seed, PSV's in the 11th seed. They obviously, Dubai's a brand new team. PSV was not in the playoffs last year. So these are a couple of new faces. And then we have Kanazawa still hanging around there too.
Yeah, this PSV team, I think, is pretty interesting. It's on paper, it's almost like a team that would not be playoff ready. But he's gotten some really good production out of somebody like Noah Clowney, who I don't like, right? But he has had a nice year to this point. Brandon Ingram has been a little bit of a surprise for me as well. I think PSV maybe is one more year away from making a deep championship run, but he's firmly entrenched himself in the playoff tier at this point, I think. And then Kanazawa is, I think it would be higher with a fully healthy and performing Jalen Williams. Bam Adebayo has been having kind of a down year, but I really like this pairing of Scotty Barnes, Jalen Williams, Alex Sarr, and Bam. I think it's a great core group, similar to some of the other guys in this tier. Though I think there's some stuff on the sides that he needs to really boost up before he's able to take that next leap. But he's really similar to PSV. He's established that he is a playoff team, and I think he squeaked in. If I'm not mistaken, what was he? He squeaked in at the end of the playoffs last year, right? 15 or 16.
He was like the 15th seed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, he's in there making some noise, and I know Jalen Williams just went down for another week or two, but if he's able to come back healthy late in the season, could be a potential playoff matchup nightmare. Okay, and then we got Dubai here. Some really nice production out of Danny Avdia, Anthony Edwards. Miles Turner's been a little bit of an underwhelming, has had an underwhelming season thus far. But Ryan Rollins has been so awesome. And I think in his position, I would probably look to take that first round pick and turn it into some more stable production, maybe attach it to somebody like Miles Turner. If you're not banking on a bounce back, but just a nice combo of guys here. If Kawhi is producing in the playoffs, that's a potential, and I'll say this, our league, more so than some other leagues that we're in, these, 14, 15, 16, those teams are legitimate, right? These aren't like just like a weak 16 seed who's going to come in and limp his way to a playoff appearance, right? You want that in a league to have that kind of parity, and I think our league does achieve that, just by looking at this here, seeing, okay, the guy with Anthony Edwards, Kawhi Leonard, Denny Avdia, that's quite the trio there.
That last team there covers the top 16. So that's currently who's in the active playoff picture for our league. So the 16th seed is held by the Houston Comets. 17th seed is the LA Lakers, who's only a game and a half back. And then the Boston Celtics and the 18th seed are 2.5 games back. So there is a couple others knocking on the door to get into playoffs. And then after that, we have Colossus Rhodes at 19th overall. He is 5.5 games back. So let's take a quick look at the tankers. Like most notably what I would look at as the top of the tankers section, number 22, 23, 24, because basically what Mitchell's implying with this power rank is whoever's at the top of the tankers section is likely those who's closest to ready to coming out of the tanker section, maybe getting into playoff hopefuls or shooting yourself straight into contender like what Mitchell did last year. And in the tanking picture for our league right now, the bottom 3 teams right now, Magnolia Chicken Templados is in 30th, the Sacramento Monarchs is in 29th, and the Singapore Slingers is in 28th. So those are the 3 teams with the best overall odds to get the number 1 overall pick. As you can see in the power rankings, Sacramento is 23. That's towards the top of the tankers tier. So we think he's somebody who's probably ready to contend. He just really is relying on health, especially Zion, John Morant. He needs Kuminga's situation to get figured out. He's, of course, got Ace Bailey. And then he's got, as of right now, one of the best odds to get the number 1 overall pick. So a team like that getting number 1 overall can do some serious damage. New York and Alba Berlin are some pretty good tanking teams that are close to making the jump. Berlin's in 26th place, so a couple spots out of that top 3. And New York is in 22nd place. So not as great of odds, but they have a really good team. So it's probably a bit tougher for them to tank. And then we have just some other guys on the outskirts of the bottom 3, like maybe Toronto will get lucky, or Seattle, or Singapore is actually still in the top 3. So we'll see how that ends up going.
Well,
But
can I add, Andrew,
shift?
I just want to say real quick, in regards to tanking odds, I think getting lucky is putting it lightly. I mean, as long as you're in the top 8 or something, I think you have a legitimate chance at getting the first overall pick. And we've seen it, a couple of years now, because our lottery matches the lottery of the NBA, right? So depending on what happens this year, I think it'll be interesting to see how teams kind of approach the tanking thing as a whole if, the bottom 4 teams continue to not get the first overall pick. So I just wanted to, I thought that was worth mentioning as well. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's a good point. All right, so that does it for our power rankings view as of right now. Again, Mitchell's going to have an update for us maybe closer to playoff time. If you want to view our power ranks as well as all of our content, all the links, all the platforms that we are on, check out our website, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com. That is the best place to go for us. What we are going to do is we are going to drop a video podcast covering big trades that have happened in the Angle Dynasty League. You're going to see that come out maybe about 2 to 3 days from now. So we're doing double coverage on the Angle Dynasty League this week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you are new, leave a like, and we will see you next time.